Okay, so here's my crack at another video. I'm sitting here at McDonald's. It's April 1st, 2022, 1:47 p.m. I've been now homeless, or I prefer transient. Transient is a better word. Here in Langley, and throughout the Lower Mainland for a better part of a couple months now. I have been staying at the Salvation Army here in Langley, Gateway of Hope. And Langley is kind of, for me, at this point, a bit of a safe place, because there's nowhere in British Columbia, probably nowhere in Canada that's populated, or America or North America, where I would be or feel safe, And so what we're going to do right now is we're just going to discuss a few of the tactics that I've noticed or believe are being employed by the people that are harassing me through brain-computer interfaces, okay? And I'm just going off the top of my dome, and I'm just going off based on what I've experienced, and then I'm also going to be abstracting and extrapolating and saying that I can't, often, in fact, anything I say, it can't be fact of the matter. I don't know any of this to be true yet. I can only imagine most of it's true or probable. Sorry, let me restate that. I can only imagine most of it is not true, but true-ish, and a lot of it probable. Even the stuff that you would think is improbable, a lot of that is probable at this point, because a lot of what you think is improbable is just based off of bad data. Okay, it's based off of poor knowledge of the world around you. It's based off of not mapping to reality properly. And we can all be forgiven for not mapping directly to reality. I mean, we have five senses that perceive or the universe, the space around us in those five ways. And as we know, there's other ways to perceive the universe, say like X-rays or any type of wavelength on the spectrogram that we can't see, and or taste or feel, or and so we are vulnerable to a lot of the stuff that we can't see. And so, for instance, one of the ways that this materializes in my particular case is I can't necessarily say for sure currently, just colloquially or without professional diagnoses, whether the voice in my head is in fact coming from somebody or something using a what I believe might be a magnetic resonator to recreate what your brain would think of as a voice in your head, words and phrases and sentences from a person, a consistent person, same tone, same voice, not same tone, but same timbre, same voice, as to make it seem or appear to be a conversation with somebody you know. Generally, that is one of the ways that they hang their hat. You think you're talking to somebody that you know. Okay, and they'll often switch those people up. And in my case, I get it 24/7 if I'm not talking to you or somebody else. And even sometimes when I am, I get, either voices that spring internally, or voices that spring externally. And it's my conclusion, or my best guess, is that these voices are actually coming from an external force. Now, I'm just going to outline again why I think that. First, I hear no voices my entire life, and I am my entire adult life a drug user. The ones that cause psychosis or blah, 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 and I never experienced any of that my entire adult life. At 37, I guess 36 is accurate. At 36, when Tracy and I finally move out of the house that we separated, literally the day I move out and I get to my new apartment, or Airbnb I should say, I start to hear what is basically the neighbors talking, okay? Or what I thought was the neighbors talking. And by the end of my 1 month tenure at that Airbnb, I realized that wasn't the neighbors talking. And I'm hearing something. I don't know what it is. It's something they're talking about me, but that's crazy inducing. Maybe I'm going crazy, actually. That was my initial thought. All right, well, fast forward about 6 months later, and all of a sudden the voices aren't just kind of having a conversation in and around me about things that aren't directly related to me, but now they're actually talking to me directly, addressing me directly, saying things like, "You'll never find out who we are. You'll never find out how we're doing this. You'll never catch us, and you are going to go to jail and or die or be institutionalized for a long time. Death obviously is somewhat permanent, we think, and but the rest of it, is for debate. But the way that they were trying to scare me or put my toe to the line is to basically just say, hey, be terrified because we can read your passwords by reading your sub vocalizations. Excuse me, we can read your mind. And what's scary is scary, and as I'm in the middle of it still, and I don't know how this is going to end. You have to imagine, despite my calm demeanor, I am still scared and frightened. One of the things I noticed right off the bat, okay, was that my family, my mom, my father, my stepdad, my sister, people that were close to me, were treating me very differently when me and Tracy separated finally. And I didn't know why at first, obviously, and I was feeling crazy making, and I was still doing drugs, and so they would say, Matt, you're the reason why we support Tracy in her when she got a lawyer in having full custody of the kids is because, Matt, you're on drugs, and you can't be on drugs around the kids. And my counter to that was always, well, I've been on drugs my entire adult life. That means from the time that Callie was 0 to now, I was on drugs, and I was Father of the Year before you had any inclination from, by Tracy texting my mom and Laura that I was shooting up or something, which I don't shoot up drugs. I've never done that. But they started to get worried about it. And my behavior really didn't change as a cause of the drugs, but my behavior started to change when the sub-vocalizations started to become very malicious in their intent. And so one of the things that I think happened is there was a time in my life when Callie said to me, we were living, me and Tracy and Ryan and Carter were living in my home, and Ryan was very drunk a lot. And Ryan had been telling me, my cousin Ryan McNabb, was telling me that not only was he still drinking lots, which he'd always done since I'd known him, but now when he was drinking, he was going a little crazy by the end of the night. And it turns out, about 2 months into his tenor, yeah, he was, and he could not stay in my house anymore. It was my conclusion. We got into a fight. I beat him up. He'd walked naked and bleeding into Carter's room one night, so I beat him up, and the police got called. And about a week later, I'd finally rented him from my house. Now, I didn't realize at the time that he was likely being sub-vocalized and made crazy as well. So he might have had some police attention. And then the other realization I had a bit later on, way later on, was, holy shit, maybe nothing actually did happen to Callie. Maybe when Callie said to me these words, when I was explaining to her Uncle Ryan wouldn't be around, she said to me, what about the secret games me and Ryan would play? Of course, my heart sunk. I'll never forget it. I can picture it right now. My daughter, 5 years old at the time, saying those words to me, was like, holy fuck, right? So I asked her some more questions, and I said, well, what kind of games? And she said, real life snakes and ladders, slither up and down the body, password to get through the legs. I didn't need too much more explanation after that, because I was high at the time, as I always was on a stimulant. I decided to wait as Ryan was gone until Tracy got home from breaking up with her boyfriend. Which, by the way, didn't happen, but anyway. As I was speaking to Tracy, I said, hey, Tracy, do you mind phoning the police? Because this is what your daughter said. I'm a little high, and I just would prefer that it come from the mother, as I think that's a better place for it to come from. And she said, no, she would not do that. And I don't, I probably pushed back. I don't remember what the pushback was or what her, at the end of the day, she didn't want to phone the police. And I was having a hard time understanding why, but I said, well, I guess it behooves me to do it. And so I did. And they came and they took a statement from me and they took a statement from Tracy. Callie was in bed. By the time Tracy had gotten home that day, actually, Callie was in bed. And so Tracy's statement to the police, which I thought was kind of odd, was that Matthew's high and Callie never said that to me. And I thought, well, that is just really a weird thing to say, and I wasn't too pleased with it. And about a month later, the police apparently closed the investigation, as I'd left it in Tracy's hands to continue on. I just figured as the mother of Callie, she'd have no incentive to not want to follow this to the end. That what she'd said to the investigators was just her not being particularly smart about, you want those investigators to look into it fully and not think that there's any reason whatsoever that's not true, what your daughter had said to her father. And, Maybe she didn't think it was true. I don't know. But when she came home about a month later and said the investigation was closed, I said, well, did the police ever talk to Callie? She said no. And I thought, well, that's not right. So I reopened it. Or what I did was I got Callie to come downstairs. And I said, Callie, when your mother comes downstairs, listen, this is what I want you to do. I want you to tell her about what you told me. Remember the secret games? And she said yes. And that's what she did. Now, her mother, unbeknownst to her, I was recording that incident. Now, I don't have the recording anymore, unfortunately. Wish I did. I wish I did. But at the time, I told Tracy, now Tracy, I've recorded this, and I've recorded because she basically literally did not react to Callie telling her this stuff. Which I was shocked just to see it go down. I was like, Tracy, your daughter is telling you about some pretty crazy things here. Like a reaction, acknowledgement. Maybe just look at her and say, I hear you, Callie. The minute I told her, no response to anything I said to her there. And the minute I told her about Tracy, I am recording your non-reaction, and I will actually bring this to the police at this point if you yourself do not go to the police and ask for this to be reopened. Well, that was a mistake on my part. I should have literally just went right to the police and brought them that recording. I wish I had. Because what happens in the interim is I believe Tracy goes back to the police, says, who knows what she says, but essentially, my husband or Matthew has forced me to reopen this, and the police in Abbotsford, the Abbotsford PD, from that point on, I'm basically a target of theirs. As the male in the house that uses drugs, they identify I'm using drugs. And Tracy, who doesn't use drugs, I kind of get it on one level because the data indicates that I would be the problem. Unfortunately for them, you can't just go on the data, and every case has its own case, and you need to individually look at it and be very rigorous and skeptical of all of that. And by the way, I'm on drugs right now, methamphetamine. Am I some crazy, psychopathic, out of control? No worries, but he said hi. I'm a friendly guy, and meth just gives me focus. I have ADHD, gives me strength, stamina, a bunch of other things I don't need to talk about here. And according to the data, it will give you stimulant psychosis. So let's talk about that. Right after, I'm going to touch on that really, after I just finish this point. And so the investigation turns to me. I'm then told never told that the second one is closed. Maybe it's still open. I don't know. But I am not aware that the police have ever spoken to Callie and Carter about it. Tracy claims they haven't, and the police, as far as I know, claim they haven't as well. So, with this in mind, it would appear that one of the tactics that the people using brain-computer interface to extort would be that they work alongside investigations, and they work alongside, and another thing they work alongside, and the reason that this kind of makes sense is these two things come together: drug users. They like to target drug users, and this will be kind of a cherry on the point that I'm about to make. I said I was going to make quickly, and that is that drug users are often people that could experience things like psychosis, right? Drug-induced psychosis happens from alcohol, happens from cocaine, it happens from all sorts of things. But alcohol is a good one to look at. If you look at alcohol, it has a 0.5% in alcoholics, I think it is, or it might be 5%. But that's probably a pretty good number to look at when you're saying how many people have been sub-vocalized by these people. I'm going to say that alcohol does not actually give people psychosis. Alcohol will knock you out. It won't give you psychosis, though, is my best guess. Because the data's wrong. Because there's no accounting for any synthetic telepathy at all. At all, when you're looking at drug use, alcohol use, anything like that. Okay, so when you go to a psychiatrist right now, this is April 1st, 2022 at 2:01 p.m. When you go to any psychiatrist in Canada, America, or Europe, one of the things is that they have no data that indicates that any of the fucking psychosis or any of the voices I might be hearing could potentially be caused by synthetic telepathy. And when you pair that with the fact that every freaking drug user on the street that I meet and talk to about this, and I've been doing that because I'm not scared, they're trying to intimidate all of them, all admit to hearing voices. And they all admit to hearing voices. Is a thing to take note of. 100%. And it doesn't matter what drug they use, what their drug of choice is. It doesn't matter how long they've been on the street. None of that matters. And they all deny it at first. Until I catch them again, talking to themselves. And they go, see, look, you're talking to yourself in a way that's like you're talking to someone else. Are those the voices? I hear them too. And they all have an eerily similar story. That is, to build a baseline, they need to see how you react to their subvocals in order to utilize this technology properly. And so they kind of have to talk around you. They can't talk directly to you at first. They wouldn't be able to make sense in your head. They don't know how your neurons fire. They don't know which regions to target yet. They need to both target and listen to you before they can talk directly at you. Is another thing to realize. Okay? And so, now that I've outlined kind of how that started, they targeted my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter. They targeted her to tell me Uncle Ryan's secret games. Now, I have a cousin, Graham McNish. He's also cousins of Ryan McNabb. We're all cousins, so their mothers are my aunts, blood aunts, and my father's their uncle. And Ryan is someone that has been a good friend of mine for a long time. Grew up with him in Ontario, but like one of my best friends growing up. In my 18, from the time I'm 18 to nowish, he's one of my best friends. And Graham has always hated Ryan for reasons I'm not clear on, but he has. And so, in my suspicions of Graham, one of the things that I noticed in Graham's life is by the time he gets a job at the Coast Guard, as he gets a job at the Coast Guard, I think that's 4 or 5 years ago, okay? A bunch of things in Graham's life start to happen. As people in his orbit, at an exceedingly high number, are being driven crazy. So I just told you about Ryan hearing voices, yeah? I'll tell you about Uncle Jeremy. Uncle Jeremy was having a hard time financially, I'm guessing extorted, ended up hanging himself. Our mutual cousin Alex found him. But Aunt Leslie will tell you that he was having a really hard time, was really spooked, and wasn't himself all of a sudden out of nowhere. Needed money, needed financial help, was staying with Aunt Leslie, even though they were divorced. Another touchstone, the divorce. Ryan's divorced, matter of fact. Another thing to realize is that Graham has a friend named Ron Fernhill. Ron's very good with computers, and Ron kills himself sometime shortly after Graham gets a job at the Coast Guard. It was very sad. Ron was also a friend of mine. I wasn't as good of friends with Ron as Graham was. But Ron kills himself, was having mental health issues and kills himself. Ron himself told me he was hearing voices. I didn't think much of it at the time other than to say, hey, you're on drugs, Ron. So, and I wasn't hearing voices when he told me that, right? It was something that was going on in Ron's life. Another touchstone is that shortly after Graham's wedding, Asia has a cousin who's a drug user and dealer. He ends up overdosing / killing himself. And then Dolph. Dolph is a guy that tried to fight me at a bar, a friend of Asia and Graham's, and he ends up missing, very unlike him, blah, 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 blah. Now, why is this unusual? Well, Graham's job with the Coast Guard puts him in close proximity to all the emergency services communications, and since it's in Prince Rupert, at a pretty important deep cove harbor, I imagine it puts them in pretty close proximity to some CSIS agents and or people that look over what's the word I'm looking for, domestically and or internationally, some of the security issues that come with operating a port and an airport in northern Canada, one of the more important deep coves. And so it would not be out of the question that Graham could get his hands on government used sub-vocalizers and synthetic telepathy machines, or that's what I call them. I don't know the proper name for them, but it just to me would seem to be that's what they do. They synthetically telepathize or synthetically make you hear. So one of the other things that I recognize about Graham is this: that Graham McNish is in between some power. He's a man in between some power bases. That's to say, our cousin, his brother, James McNish, is NDP campaign manager provincially, who's by happenstance. Remember I was talking about, or you may not recall, but one of the things you can do when you have a subvocal machine is trick some girls into thinking that you're their perfect mate. Well, who isn't James married to, or having a kid with, and might as well be married to, but the NDP's federal MPP out of Victoria and lead environmental critic who yells at Justin Trudeau all day. Forget her name actually. Laurel Adams. I think is it Adams? Laurel. Well, I know it's Laurel's the first name. Just coincidentally, one of the more powerful females in his political party, he ends up marrying or having a kid with and living. That's just coincidence. And I'm sure it's just coincidence that his good friend Lee, who, no disrespect, Lee, you're not the smartest person in the world, but I guess you don't need to be a mayor. Has I think won the mayoralship in Prince Rupert. His best friend is the mayor of his hometown, and I think won it uncontested the second time around. Now, Jen Rice, you might have a lot to say about these voices, and I will reach out to you at some point, Jen Rice, because I know Graham had a hate on for you. And Jen Rice might have a story to tell that's quite similar to this. I have not spoken to her ever. I'm going to release this video, and we'll see what happens. I bet you she's heard voices. Yeah? Voices are flipping out now. They're going, shit, that's a good one, Matt. That's a good one. And so one of my theories is that the voices are people that are involved in emergency services, not necessarily the police institutionally, although that's also something I have talked about and thought about and had fears of. I'm kind of less on that right now that they're institutionally using that, and that's just kind of me being an optimist. I'm trying to be an optimist that the police aren't allowing this type of technology willy-nilly in our communities, punishing people, like giving them 24/7 torture or harassment before any kind of due legal process, that kind of thing. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I have lodged some complaints to the RCMP with pretty much nothing coming back my way. And I'm starting to have some concerns that maybe just the local RCMP are not. So I shot something to the FBI about the Ragnar Lockheed group. I shot something to the Ottawa-based RCMP, and I'll continue to look up bureaus and desks to make complaints to as the time goes on. So let's talk about now another one of the things they like to do. They like to make you think you've committed a crime that requires this type of punishment. Either a crime too light to actually bring you to the courts, or you're too important to go in front of the courts, or we just thought this was more appropriate. But know this, if it's not in the Charter or the Bill of Rights, then guess what? They don't have a right to do it this way. You need to be found guilty before they extol any kind of punishment on you, and that's the talking to you bit. In order to do investigations, sure, they might be able to listen in to your subvocals. Talking back to you would seem rather biased and not really a fair way to do an investigation. So if they are talking back using synthetic telepathy, a technology that they don't want to admit they have at this point but have been using for a long time, that's not going to fly, because I'm going to be able to prove that, hey, it's something that exists. If they're not aware of it, then that would leave a benefit of the doubt that I've been coerced or blah, 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 blah. And that's what I'm going to go with as a legal defense to anything they throw my way, because essentially what they've been doing in my head is trying to dissuade me from talking about this in such a sophisticated manner. One of the things I do very well is communicate. I talk very, very well. I got the gift of the gab, if you will. And to sit here and do nothing about it, it's not, I can't do it. I can't roll over and die, in other words, which they've asked me to do many times. Matt, roll over and die. Matt, kill yourself. Matt, just get this over with. It's a no-win situation for you. Well, for me, there is a win. For me, I can hold myself with virtue. I can puff my chest up. I can hold my head up high and do what I believe is the right thing. And that is to warn everybody in my life, warn all the people of this country and other nations that currently you are vulnerable, because our nations will not admit to the use of synthetic telepathy and subvocal machines, or at least they're not aware of it. It would be another possibility, and need to become aware of it. And so I'm fighting a good fight, making people aware and trying to let people know some of the shit that has been going down in my life. All right, so they can read passwords if they're subvocalizing. They just got to ask, what's your password, Matt? Type your password in, Matt. Basically, if you type your password in, they have your password. Okay? That's subvocal reading. Done deal. Okay? So we need a better system than passwords. All right? They like to do crime at arm's reach. That's one of the advantages of BCI, is that they can ask you to do something that's a crime. Say if they're bikers and they want somebody beat up, they might ask you to beat somebody up. It's happened to me a few times where I just start, people get aggressive with me out of nowhere, more frequently than has ever happened in my life. So in the last year, for instance, I've been in more fights than I have in probably my entire life. I've had more police contact in the last year and a half than I have for my entire life combined. And it's by no coincidence. Now, the police might think they're doing a proper investigation. I don't know. They may actually, no, they're not doing a proper investigation. It is hard to say. Callie and Carter, my two daughters, who I love dearly, have been violently ripped from their fathers. So here's another thing that I like to use against men and women. Mostly men, but this has happened to women too, is access to your kids. So they'll say things like, we're going to help your wife's lawyer, your ex-wife. We're going to help your ex-husband's lawyer. And guess what? That's not good for you. And it would appear they might have in my case, because without any charges, without any even accusation by anybody of anything violent, abusive, physical or verbal or otherwise, my ex was granted a protection order. Now, part of the reason for that was I was scared to get a lawyer, because I thought maybe one of the narratives in my head was that, oh, they'll get a lawyer and that lawyer will tell them I said something that required, the safety of the kids be taken first or whatever. And so I didn't get a lawyer, because I'm going, I don't know if RDM is the only law firm using subvocals or leveraging the subvocals from this particular group of people. And when I Googled RDM, I went, holy shit. Well, that's a hell of a lot of lawyers for a little Abbotsford law firm. They must work very closely with the mayor or the police force, or there must just be a lot of divorces in this Christian town. I just don't quite understand how, like that, they have so many paralegals and so many lawyers. Look, I mean, you look at Bordenlander Gervais, that's an international, huge law firm, and I think they have a comparable amount of lawyers. Honestly. It's crazy. It's crazy. And so, well, that's just one touchstone, is they threaten that they'll take your kids away. And a lot of the people on the street I've talked to have suffered that fate. They've suffered the fate of not being around their kids. Not being allowed to be around their kids. So at this point, it's safe to say that that's one of the things they like to do. I've suffered that fate, and I have to tell you, it's not been fun. I'm just gonna I'm getting a close-up of my forehead here, just because it's neat. It's a neat little graphic, isn't it? I'm taking a break to gather my thoughts here. We're doing tactics, eh? Okay, so they get people to attack you, so there's no trouble for them generally. They wear you out through attrition 24/7. They're on you, so they expect me to be begging them for, stop this, stop. No, I don't, not me. No, they've begged me to stop, actually. They've begged me to stop. Man, just please, we need this over. We can't talk to you anymore. It's too much. You're too much for us. And the truth is, I'm way smarter than the people that are in my head. That's another reason I knew. I'm just like, you know what? These voices are not springing from an internal source, because anything springing from my brain would be so much smarter, so much more articulate, so much better able to connect the dots. And I do tend to insult them quite a bit. They don't love that. They're used to it being the other way around. What else? Kelly and Carter, I mean, as far as I know, love their dad and have very good, as they should, memories of me. And I say memories because I've not been able to see them. We're coming on to about 4 or 5 months now since Tracy got that protection order. And Tracy quite literally will not even let me on a phone call with them, which is pretty unusual. And I will remind you, I've been charged and accused of nothing, ever. By her or by the police or by anyone, except for being on drugs. But this is me on drugs. I'm on drugs right now. Every video you've ever seen of me is me on drugs. Every music video, every time any of my family members and friends, anytime you've ever talked to me, I was high on a stimulant. That is something I've been using daily my entire adult life. And one of the things is the drugs don't get more powerful as you use them. They actually get less powerful. So how at 36, out of nowhere, do I start hearing voices, coincidentally, when there's $1 million in assets up for grabs? I'm sure that's just a coincidence. I'm sure of it. You know what? That's all I got for now. If you guys have any questions, ever, please field them. If you've experienced this, I've started to reach out to people. And if you've experienced this and you want to appear on my YouTube channel and talk about this, I want you to as well. So don't be shy. Reach on out. MatthewRichardKeats@gmail.com. All right? 236-887-8424. Okay? Just leave a comment on the YouTube videos. Don't forget to subscribe and like. And Callie and Carter, just as a little end note to this video, I want you to always know that the reason I'm fighting so hard for everyone else is that I can't imagine this happening to anyone else. And as a consequence to that, one of the things that's happening is, unfortunately for you guys, is it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to see you guys anytime soon, because I'm honestly really more concerned with everyone else's kids and their ability to not have to experience this. I don't want anyone else to have to go through this. And so what I'm trying to do is make the government recognize these two technologies exist. That if they're not using them, that they need to recognize there's a very powerful asymmetry for con artists and fraudsters and for anybody trying to do crime that uses a brain-computer interface to do it, has just upgraded their abilities substantially. And every civilian should be aware of this and concerned. More than concerned. You should be flipping the frick out. Write your MPPs, write your MP, write every single person you can. Inform the police that you know and you're aware and you're scared. And how can I be aware, Matt? Well, a few ways. You can just look at the physics of it and know that it's possible. You can look at the thousands of peer-reviewed papers from all the universities you wish you went to. UBC, Harvard, Stanford, Stratford, South Korean ones, Russian ones, European ones, all the Ivy League ones have BCI, University of Toronto, U of A, McGill, UBC, all have UBC programs. In fact, BCI programs. UBC has a brain-computer interface program. And we do pretty good work out here in this country. And so when I say we need the government to recognize it, we need the government to recognize the unique asymmetrical power it gives people who are aware and utilizing it, leveraging it for themselves in a criminal manner. Oh, here's another tactic really quick before I sign off, guys. They often would claim BCI, brain-computer interface, isn't a crime. It's not a crime to use it. Well, here's the counter, really simple. A baseball bat, it's not a crime to use a baseball bat either. It becomes a crime to use it when you smash someone's head with it. All right? Yeah, so I am signing off. Callie, Carter, I love you so much. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that everyone else is safe from this. And hopefully I get to see you and talk to you unassailed by your mom's lawyers and unassailed by some third-party nonsense. And hopefully the truth comes out at some point. Girls, I love you no matter what. I'll never be mad at you, and I'm always proud of you. And I miss you so much. Anytime you say to yourself, Dad, I love you, I say it back, okay?